22 past the hour. It's JT. Sky Blue Radio sounds absolutely great at any altitude. Guess who I have here, folks? It is Mr. Robert Randazzo from PMDG. Say hello there, Mr. Robert.
Hello there, Mr. Robert.
No, you must be a pilot. You follow instructions, right?
Exactly. I can do what I'm told occasionally.
I tell you what, I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for coming on. There's been all kinds of people asking questions about your latest releases and what the plan is for the future and stuff like that. So we already have some questions coming in on our Discord channel. And, if you're just tuning in, you can go to our website at skyblueradio.com and just click the chat with us link there at the top, and you'll be brought into our Discord channel. It's really easy and it's a lot of fun. Well, first, Robert, happy birthday to PMDG. I think you guys are 50 years, or not 50 years, 25 years this year, right?
That's right. Yeah. The 7th of August we will turn 25. So.
7th of August. All right. Well, we have a pretty good cake maker on staff. Maybe we'll do that as your birthday present for you guys.
We're trying to figure out. 25 is a big number. We're trying to figure out. We got to do something, right? We're trying to figure out what it is. So if you guys wind up with any ideas, let me know, because it would be kind of fun to actually do something interesting.
Yeah, since you're 25, you could take that away from, let's say 100, which would leave 75, right? So how about 75% off all products for your birthday weekend? How about that?
I already, I think you and I were joking the last time I was on that. Right. Each birthday we do, we've added another percent, and hey, if we get to 100%, it's all free. Yeah,
right. So that'd be 100 years, and that'll be way past our time, I think, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure I will care much if we get to that point.
That's funny. Okay, so let's just kick it off. You made a huge announcement yesterday or the day before in your forum about what's going on with PMDG as it relates to Microsoft Flight Simulator, because a lot of people have been waiting for a long time for that, and myself included, because I'm a huge fan, of course, of PMDG and all of its products, pretty much flight exclusively. So thank you for you and all your team that have put together such a fine product for all of us. It's great. So thank you for that. Can you kind of sum up your forum post for everybody here? Because it was pretty lengthy, and I don't want to go through all of it. Maybe you can kind of sum it all up, and then, like I said before, we do have some questions in our forum, so I can plug them in as you go along if you want. Are you there?
Oh, sorry. There was actually a hiccup there. I heard you say plug them in, and then it went dead.
Oh, that's kind of weird. Okay. Well, you want to go ahead and sum that up for us, and then
Sure.
And then I'll jump in with whatever these guys have for you.
Sure. So I actually have it on the screen in front of me because the way things have been going lately, I write these things at about 3:30 in the morning. So sometimes it's hard to remember exactly what information was included the night before.
Yeah.
So we're just about finished. With the 737-700. We've been just about finished for a while, but we weren't quite happy with the product quality level. There were little issues that we were still trying to iron out, interfaces between our stuff and the simulator, and then little behaviors inside our airplane, things that have been wrong for some time that still needed to be fixed, and other things that we had just categorized that things that we were going to fix and we hadn't gotten to yet. So we've been at this for a while. We've been in beta testing now. I think we're rolling up on 60 days next week. And we've been down this road a number of times. There's people often say, well, when's it going to release? And we don't know. It'll release when it's done. And so then the obvious question is, well, when's it done? we don't know. It is not very scientific. It's kind of done by feel. We know what we're trying to accomplish, and we know when we have accomplished it. And there is a an ease with which our beta testers start to talk to us about the product that becomes very evident when it's finished. And then we also have a ton of performance metrics internally. We've got an entire issue tracking software that we have been using now for 20 years, and we have every issue that's been related on our 737 simulation going back to 2003. And so, we can go through and look at metrics and look at the history of things. And we've got little progress bars that show us all kinds of fancy stuff. And I guess if, some software engineer a whole lot smarter than me would be able to look at it and tell us when it does this, that means you're done. We look at it and we've got some things we look for, and we're seeing them now. So
it'd be nice if it was that easy, wouldn't it?
We're happy with the product. Of course, we gave another version of the beta team last night, and this morning woke up to a whole bunch of stuff in the inbox. But we'll get that stuff sorted out. So, the what's in it? This package is the 737-700. And with that, you get the passenger airplane, you get the cargo airplane, and you get the BBJ. And each of those airplanes is fully fitted out. It's not just a visual model. The passenger airplane has a ton of options on the flight deck that are unique to the passenger version of the 700. The cargo airplane likewise has its own kit, and the BBJ does as well. Each of them has a unique interior that's fitting to the airplane's mission. The ground handling equipment that you can utilize around the airplane in various ways. All of that is unique to it as well. So for example, the cargo airplane has cargo loaders and a main deck cargo loader and a bunch of other stuff. And then the BBJ has a bunch of VIP SUVs that'll drive up and drive away and that sort of thing. So
that's funny. I was just going to ask that. How does that work with the BBJ? That'll be really cool. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is kind of cool, and we're working. Long term, we've got some goals on some things. There's some neat stuff that we can do with Microsoft Flight Simulator that we've not really been able to do well previously, and there's some core technology in the sim that will allow us eventually when we kind of get caught up and catch our breath, you'll be able to have your little VIP, gal or guy go up the stairs and get in the airplane and that kind of stuff. So there's lots of neat things that we can do that's coming that will really add to the play value of the simulation. But one of the things that I tried to answer last night because it comes up a lot, and I just ignore the question because when you're me, you get to do that. And there's a whole bunch of people on the PMDG team rolling their eyes right now because they ask questions and sometimes I just don't answer. But one of the questions that comes up in our forum all the time is, okay, so what's missing? And the reason why I ignore that question is, really until we get to the finish line, it's hard to say. We are building a product in a simulation platform that we've never really built something this big in before, and we might run into knee knockers that we didn't anticipate. So I always try to be really careful about what we promise, and whether I talk in absolutes or not. So what's missing? The answer is pretty much nothing. There's a couple of things that we're still working on that we're not really happy with, and I'll get into those in a second. But if you have used our products in Prepared, you're going to recognize it, and it actually has more features and is really more feature rich, I think, in Microsoft Flight Simulator than in any of the other platforms we've worked with. So that's a good thing. There has been a lot of concerns from folks about performance, and that's a tough one for us to answer sometimes because we're working in a development environment and we're working with beta versions of the simulator itself. We're working with beta versions of the SDK. We're sometimes working with sort of subversions that Asobo hands to us, to see if they were able to fix something that was plaguing us. So when we look at performance numbers, we have to be really careful that we don't accidentally give you performance numbers off of a rig that's running a whole bunch of beta software, because those numbers just aren't right. And then on top of it, the way we build the versions that we're trying to debug with, we those are built differently than the ones when we build one to give to our beta testers. And there's terminology for those, and for those that work in software, we've got beta and release modes, and we need to make sure that we're running a core simulator that's exactly the same as the one that's in public, and we're building in release mode, and. So I actually, as I was getting ready to do this last night, went through that whole process. It takes about 2.5 hours, and built one, and and did some metrics and compared it to some other things. And we continue to be really happy with performance. It's just, especially for how much stuff we are packing into it, and how much visual quality there is, and all the other things that come with Microsoft Flight Simulator, we're getting extraordinary performance, and it really speaks well to the quality of the rendering engine, and the quality of the work of teams on both sides of the aisle. So that's going well. I addressed. There's another question that comes up fairly frequently is hey, I've owned every version of the 7.3, going back to 2003. Can I get a discount?
That's me. I've gone all the way back to the original too, so I'm with you on that one.
Well, thank you. As always, we do appreciate that. We try very hard to pack as much value in as we can, and there's a long running joke that you can count on the fact that you'll never buy a product on sale from Rolls-Royce, Tiffany, or PMDG, and we finally broke that tradition a couple of years ago. We decided it might be nice to do a little bit here and there, and but we tend to be a little stingy on sales and promos and upgrades, and with the but we actually made we made a big break from that tradition when we were 3 years ago. Right now, we were hard at work on a 737 update in the prepared market that we thought was going to be the next big release for us, and we were about 2/3 of the way through that, and Microsoft decided it would be fun to rain on our parade by announcing Microsoft Flight Simulator, and of course just sort of stunned the entire simulation community, which with what was coming. And and I'm sort of poking fun at them, raining on our parade. But this was a tremendous announcement, and it was something that our entire customer base was waiting for and hoping for, and never imagined would actually happen. And here it was. And of course, we were 6 months away from releasing a new version of our 737 for prepared, and so we got into conversations with Microsoft and Asobo, and we at that time thought that our 737 version in Microsoft Flight Simulator would probably release the following summer, so June of 2020. And so we decided, well, if we're going to put a new version of the 737 out in prepared, and then we're going to put a new version out in 7 months later in Microsoft Flight Simulator, we should probably do the right thing by our customers and say, hey, if you're going to buy this one in prepared, we're gonna help you with an upgrade to Microsoft Flight Simulator, because with what we were seeing behind the curtain from Microsoft, there was no doubt in our mind that this new platform was going to be extraordinary. And of course, it didn't quite work out that way, but we didn't know that back in November of 2019. And so we made this offer to our customers that hey, you guys have been wonderful to us, and we're going to make you this offer. And so we said, hey, if you buy between now and the release day in November and December 31, we will, into your account at pmdg.com, you'll get $100 or $99.99 to keep the lawyers happy. We'll give you $99.99 in credit toward your purchasing the 737 and Microsoft Flight Simulator. And so and we've got a system that tracked all of that, and it will be fully automatic and nice. And so the customers who qualified for that in that brief period that we offered it will, when they make the purchase for this version in Microsoft Flight Simulator, even though we're 2 years later than we thought we were going to be, they'll get that credit. And and I'm gonna I tried to not toot our own horn or make us sound like we're something grander than we are. But I do want to kind of point out one thing, and people wonder, well, gee, does PMDG do anything good for the community, and those sorts of things. This discount program that we offered was so popular to our customers that it represents just shy of a $1 million investment back into the community when we put this product on the market.
Wow.
I almost gave you a date. Oh, Jeff, it almost happened.
Oh, man.
That almost came out of my mouth. That's really funny. Yeah.
Well, the show's not over yet. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, that's a good thing I'm for sure, not whiskey. Holy moly. That literally almost came out of my mouth. But when we put this product on the market, there's 8,900 customers who qualify for that almost $100 credit. And it represents a huge investment by us back into the community. Really I view it in multiple ways. I mean, one, I think it's a great thing for us to be able to do for our customers who have, like you, who have supported us forever. But we're all kind of on the tail end of a really difficult couple of years. And so, there's been some folks concerned that due to the length of time and due to the change in the business model and the change in the marketplace and stuff like that we might try to find some way to walk away from that. And that was never going to be entertained by us. We take our promises really seriously. And frankly, I think it's a great thing because a whole lot of folks who really invested in us at the end of 2019, which we didn't know at the time was the beginning of a very difficult period for all of us just as people, but also for PMDG, because we were going into a very tough cycle with a long gestation period to get a product into Microsoft Flight Simulator, far longer than we would have envisioned. And so really all of you that qualify for it, you invested in us and you helped us get through this process. So now we get to give that back to you, and that's kind of exciting. And it's been a long time coming, and we can't wait to see you guys get in it and start flying. Pricing was I listed as a TBA. We're actually going to probably start talking about pricing next week. Pricing will be, we were always kind of setting the high watermark in Prepared. Our base packages were starting to run around 150, and our expansions were running around 75. We've done away with that business model in favor of a business model that will allow users to buy each airplane individually in sort of a bespoke fashion. So we don't have a base package and then expansions. Instead, you can buy the 700 if you want that one, and if you don't want the 900, you don't have to buy that one. You can buy the 800 instead, or the 600, or and if you want none of the above and you just want the 600, you can just buy that one. And the prices on those will vary a little bit to reflect how much work goes into those packages for us. But we think overall people will be really happy with the change in the way we're doing the pricing. It just kind of makes more sense. I think the business model in Prepared was the business model in Prepared, and this is a new model for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and we hope it works out. Then the last thing on there was people are always asking, can I give you guys something better than a wall of text? Gosh, we have been trying. I think that the PMDG team is getting tired of hearing me whine about, I just need about a 30-hour day. That's all I need. I need about a 45-day month and a 30-hour day and a 12-day week, and I could get everything done.
Yeah, right.
We're a small team. We're very heavily task saturated right now. And somewhere along the lines, someone at PMDG, I guess, decided that I should be the one that does videos. And I'll give out his phone number later so you guys can all call him in the middle of the night and harass him. But
1:30 a.m. is when we'll call him.
Okay, great. That's good because he's up in Seattle. So
perfect. Okay.
Only good for him. So, I did the videos for the DC-6, and we really got a lot of positive feedback from that. And there were a lot of people who said, hey, this was really helpful for me, and it caused me to be able to engage with the product more. And so that has always been part of the plan for the 7.3. And, a year ago, I had these grand visions of, this will be great. I'll be able to, wean out these videos, over time as we're getting through beta testing. And there is so much that changes in the 7.3 every single build. And we push the builds out almost weekly, that it's been hard because I have to try to shoot the videos around the things that we know don't work. Because you might have noticed, flight sim customers tend to get really upset when they see things that don't work because they think that we don't see it. And it's, and as often as I will say, like, hey, this is in development, don't worry about the fact that the screens are blurry. We know that already. That's not important to us right now. You just still get people, pouring the can of gasoline over their head, lighting themselves on fire in protest over it. And it's just kind of like, whoa, everybody relax. We know that. That doesn't matter right now. So getting the videos done has been problematic. And I finally cleaved out some time to get it done. And of course, because, Murphy apparently didn't have anything better to do, I all of a sudden started having overheating issues with my video card. And of course,
man.
Those are really easy to get nowadays. So wound up, stripping one out of another machine. And then, in doing that, I, managed to nuke the power supply. And, and so it was like, just
can't win, huh?
Yeah. And you start to feel like, okay, this video just doesn't want to happen.
Yeah.
So now the guy whose phone number I'm going to give you, I think he doesn't believe that all this stuff actually happens. I think he thinks that it's my way of trying to get out of doing it. But we got some videos coming, and I think you guys will like them. And really, what they're designed to do is highlight stuff that is in our products that people might not even realize is there. And we've got features in our products that have been there for so long that at PMDG we don't really pay much attention to them. It's just kind of like okay, yeah, so you can turn on. Sure. So you can go in and turn on the failures engine in our simulation, and it will literally use the airline industry average mean time to failure for most of the major components on the airplane to decide when you're going to see components break while you're flying. And, we've done this for a long time, and it is really cool technology because the things that go wrong with the airplane are the things that sort of plague the airplane in normal operation. And so what you're seeing is really pretty realistic, and it presents itself in a realistic fashion. And, we've had that in there for so long that we don't even think about it anymore. But, this is a much bigger and a much different market. And there's a whole bunch of new people coming into simming that might look at this and go, okay, that's really cool. So we want to show those things off. So understand that they're getting more than just an airplane. They're really getting a full featured, highly robust, very well vetted, very well tested, extremely accurate simulation of the airplane that is the Boeing 737.
That's going to be very cool. And it's interesting because some of the comments going on in our Discord channel right now are saying stuff like, note to self, don't let Robert work on your PC. That's kind of funny. And you mentioned about the feature videos, and you carved some time out for that. Do you have any idea when we might be able to see some of that stuff? And we understand that you're busy and stuff like that, but those, for me at least, that is really helpful for me because I'm an eye guy. Does that make sense? And I like the eye candy kind of stuff. So did you have any time frame that those things might be available?
Yeah, actually, I expect that I will start meeting them out during the course of this weekend. So cool. I've got a ton of stuff shot. I've got to edit it all together and do the voiceovering and that sort of thing. And it is a one-man show. My wife is out of town this weekend.
Oh, there you go.
So that will help.
Yeah.
It's just me and the dog, and she's sound asleep. So I expect I'll start doing it this weekend, but you're not just going to get it from me pretty soon. We have maintained a closer hold on our beta team and on streamers than we normally do. And we have not allowed our beta team to show this to you yet. Largely just because we were changing things so rapidly that we really felt that we wanted to hang on to it because this is our baby and we want to control the message and et cetera, et cetera. So we are going to unembargo. Is that a word? De-embargo?
Yes.
We're going to remove the embargo.
We'll make it a word.
Yeah, we'll make it a word. It's a PMDGism. We're going to unembargo them. I expect it will happen next week. And I was, there's two streamers that are actually good friends of mine. And this predates, the whole, advent of streaming and that sort of stuff. And, I think anyone who's hung around with us knows I'm extremely fond of Chewy. And I sort of have to like do the bifurcation of the brain thing because I want to call him by his real name, not his his handle. But Chewy's a dear friend of ours. I think the world of him. And Fabio is also a dear friend. He's been close friends to a couple of us on the PMDG team, just sort of independently, just through other events in life for a couple of decades. And those two guys have seen it and they've been looking at it. They are, they're really close friends, and they're the sorts of people that I give it to and say, hey, if we're off base here, you tell me, and I know they will. When they offer their opinion, because Matt, I love him. Matt, he has reached out to me and said, hey, this is just no, it's not. And I respect that. I respect that a lot because it would be easy for a guy in his position and, Fabio, for a guy in his position to be like, oh, well, I'll just tell them what they want so they give me the good stuff. And neither of those guys will. They are true friends. They are very, very, both of them have a very high degree of integrity. I trust them implicitly. And if I gave this to Chewy and he said, hey, this is a piece of garbage, we'd be right back in the can working on it again. But so far what he is telling me is that, he seems to like it as much as we do, and that's a great thing. And Fabio has been just hilarious in his communications with us, and so we're gonna unembargo them really soon. We're talking about the day that's going to happen with them, and we're talking about the day that's going to happen with our beta testers, and that will happen exactly X number of days before the release. So we can kind of do the math from there.
So that's let's see, that would be right after the show tonight. So we could expect release. Let's see, it's 23. So at midnight Zulu, we can expect the release of Microsoft's 737, right?
There you go. Yeah.
There's more questions that keep coming in, of course. And
go ahead.
And Merkel wants to know about the flight model. New stuff coming with service update number 9. So anything you want to tell us about that?
Unfortunately, it's become kind of a punchline. People always wonder, well, what's going to break on the, this service update? And that's kind of an unfortunate holdover, I think, from earlier in development. We do get an advanced look at it most of the time, and but I wouldn't say that that's a perfect, trap to prevent issues. I'm hedging in case anyone wonders what that throat clearing is. But we are really happy with the flight model that we have in our 737, and I want to be careful how I describe this, but there's a whole lot of marketing lingo BS that goes on in the simming world of we've got an external flight model, we've got a flight model that runs on a Cray computer on the moon, we've got things like that. Flight dynamics is a very, very complicated business, and we are very fortunate. We've got a PhD level guy on our team who does this. One of the smarter people that you will ever have the opportunity to meet. Incredibly gifted mathematician. Also happens to be a dear friend. He, we've been working together now for 21 years. We've watched each other's kids grow up. He's, a focal point to the team. I think the world of him. And he has taken a huge amount of time to sort of, to build analytics so that we could figure out what does the core flight model within Microsoft Flight Simulator do, so that we could understand it better, so that we could adapt our internal processes so that the airplane flies correctly. and our entire autopilot system is entirely custom. There is nothing in there that's relying upon the flight or the autopilot model in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that comes from 20 years of experience in doing this, and likewise the flight model. So there are aspects of Microsoft's flight model that work great for low altitude straight wing airplanes that don't necessarily relate to swept wing jets. And so some of the high altitude mechanics, some of the in ground effect mechanics in the default flight model don't really work quite well. And so we use our in-house engineering prowess in the form of Dr. Vaus to make that work so that it feels right. And, lucky for us, we've got a bunch of 737 drivers that we can rely upon. Some of them are folks that we've met through the testing process that, sort of wind up on our testing teams because they've got specific knowledge. One of them is a former delivery test pilot for Boeing. We've got, a bunch of other pilots that, have flown this airplane and other types of airplanes. And so all of that feedback kind of winds up coming back downhill to Vangelis, and he's able to then amalgamate that so that when you fly the airplane, it flies and feels the way it should. And I think what users are going to find is when you get this into Microsoft Flight Simulator and you start to fly it, it is going to feel a little bit different than it felt in Prepared. And you'll fly it for a while, and then you're going to go back to Prepared, and you'll be surprised at just how much more real and more fluid and more dynamic the flight model feels in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And a big part of that is the flight model in the simulator. Seb, who also happens to be the CEO of Asobo, Seb is really the heavy hitter brain-wise behind the aerodynamic and flight simulator. And he's done some absolutely great things. And it allows us to unlock behaviors in a high altitude swept wing jet that we've really not been able to unlock before. And I'm really excited about seeing how this unfolds in my own favorite airplane, the 747. But for now, I think people are really going to love the way this thing flies.
Yeah, it sounds pretty exciting. That's for sure. What do you think that what's going to come after the 700 variant? Is that going to be the 800 series or the 600 series?
Yeah, so that is going to be it'll be the 700, then the 600, and there, a couple of folks in our forum have expressed some surprise in that, and they think that we pulled the old, three-card Monte switcheroo and moved the 800 out, and I just want to be clear that that's actually not what happened. We've always been very clear that the 6-700 would be the first two in line, and we chose the 700 first because it's obviously more popular than the 600. And we were asked, why do that one? Can you start with the 800? And the reason why actually has a lot to do with the engineering. That a lot of the behaviors of the airplanes, the 800 has slightly different systems than the 6-700. The 6-700 are almost identical systems. There's some variations, but from what the pilot sees and interacts with, that's largely the same. So we get to go through those two in fairly rapid order. The 800 requires a pretty significant amount of lifting in order to bring those changes in. So it was easier to go from the bottom and work up than to go from the top and work down. Because if we were to start with the 800, we would have had to do all the 6-700 stuff first and then do the 800 and then go back down. And so it just didn't make sense from an engineering standpoint. The other reason why we chose the 600 next is that it will be for us relatively easy. And that's important on a personal level because, I'm the head of the team. I'm largely just because I started the company. So, this team is a group of guys that I have worked with for decades. It's a little weird to be able to say that out loud and be telling the truth.
Yeah.
And I see burnout. We have been at this now. We started what was originally supposed to be the next big 7-3 project. We started that in January of 2019. And this team has been working pretty much without holidays, vacations. Most members of the team work 6 days a week. Just because that's what they want to do in order to get ahead. We don't have a policy that says they have to do that, to be clear. But we work really hard, and this has been a very difficult period of time. We've heard other companies talk about it, and we usually don't talk about sales numbers, but most people may not realize that with the announcement of Microsoft Flight Simulator in June of 2019, the sales of prepared products dropped by a third in a 2-week period and never recovered.
Wow, that's huge.
And when you're, when that's a little concerning. We have watched the sales of products in prepared decline. Now it's down by about 92% since that announcement was made, and and there's a lot of reasons for that, and part of it is that we're not pushing new stuff out, but the market is moving. The market has been moving. The market continues to move. And so, revenue's been declining. We've been burning cash reserves for quite a while. We run a very tight business. We're very careful about how the company spends money and who it hires. There's a couple of guys out there in the world that literally we were in the process of hiring when the announcement came about Microsoft Flight Simulator, and we still have those hires on hold because we decided that we needed to get through this transition before we could grow the team because we sort of saw the writing on the wall of what was going to happen. So we'll get there. But there's burnout. That was a really long-winded answer to say that there's burnout, and I want the guys to be able to have a chance to take a week off. To only a week though, just in case they're listening. And I have been having private conversations with some of the guys about, hey, I want you to figure out how you're going to recharge and when you're going to recharge, because we have a workflow for the 737 product line scheduled out through mid-September. Wow. So, and we roll right into the 777. Vin's already at work on the 777. That flight deck is starting to come together. And we're a bunch of workaholics. We could very happily just kind of, plod along, and then, one day the lights go out. And that's no way to live. So the 600's next, to give everybody kind of an easy, to use an American baseball term, an easy base hit. And then we've got the 800, and the 800 is a heavier lift. And then we've got the 900, and the 900 is, the 900 is no picnic either, because that one's got some weird stuff on it too. But anyway, that's the order that they're coming in.
All right, that sounds really cool. Icy Mittens, one of our listeners in the Discord page, is asking, can you elaborate? That must be a PMG word too.
Elaborate? Yeah, I think that a PMG as well.
Can you elaborate a little bit about the nose wheel behavior in Microsoft Flight Simulator and the differences from, Microsoft Flight Simulator and Prepared 3D?
Yeah. So
is there a lot of difference? I don't know.
There's a huge difference. In Flight Simulator, see, this is where we're going to start confusing people. In FSX and Prepare, that model, the ground interface model within that generation of the simulation, has this really weird quirk. And if I might say this wrong, and if I say it wrong, please don't lawyer up. I'm recalling this from the deep recesses of my mind. But when we started to work on the nose wheel steering of the 747, I am typed in the airplane, and in FSX and Prepared, it doesn't steer the way the airplane steers. And so, we're talking about the change in dynamic of how the body gear steering comes into interplay with the nose gear steering, and what happens during speed transitions as you speed up and slow down across the body steering limits and things of that nature. And so one day, because I got bored, which is always a dangerous thing, I decided I'm going to fix this. This is how PMDG came about in the first place. So it's always a dangerous thing when I just decide, yeah, okay, all right, I got to fix this on my own. And so I went digging into the model to see if I could get the 747 to turn appropriately. And what I discovered was that in the FSX prepared model, there is this weird quirk where angular velocity starts to get reported incorrectly once you exceed a certain angular velocity, the numbers all of a sudden change, and it's almost as if the way that the radians, the rate of change, it's almost as if it changes from radians to degrees or degrees to radians, or some sign gets messed up someplace. But it happens to coincide with about the point where the nose wheel steering exceeds 57 degrees. And when that happens, all of a sudden the physics of the airplane turning go completely out of whack, and the airplane will begin to spin very rapidly. And if if you can, you sort of have to induce it through software, because they've tried to protect you from being able to get into that corner in the sim itself. But when I would induce it, when I would force that behavior by software, the airplane would begin to spin like a top, and literally just zoop off into the air it would go. One time, because I was bored, I sat there and watched it, and it spun fast enough that it was able to get up to about 35,000 feet before it ran out of energy and started back down again. Now, I've flown a lot of airplanes, and I've never run into an airplane that would do that. So we're just going to go on the assumption that the math was bogus and it doesn't work. So we were able to code our way around it. And it was a tremendous amount of physics math. It was a tremendous amount of, if you're really bored and you want to put yourself to sleep, start reading books on the mechanics of turning bodies with wheels. And
that would be interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, it really is. So we built this model to try and allow our products to steer like an airplane actually steers. And one of the things that we threw this out to the public, and we were like, look at this is the greatest thing ever. And what we discovered was that most simmers really have no concept of what nose wheel steering actually feels like. And when I'm sitting up in the front of the airplane that I fly now, if you go rolling the tiller steering over really hard at speeds above really like 2-3 knots, it becomes very uncomfortable very quickly. And you also get into the physics of unsticking the nose wheel and just the airplane continuing straight ahead into the grass and things of that nature. But if you watch airplanes taxiing around, they're a lot like cars. There's very little nose wheel motion on the straight and narrow and on modest turns. But if the airplane's going to make a sharp turn, it takes place at very, very slow speeds. And we found that that's not always obvious in the simming environment, and so people were getting themselves into all kinds of trouble. And so we needed to kind of change the way this worked, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that was involved in that. Fast forward to Microsoft Flight Simulator, one of the first things that I did when we got the 7.3 into it was, okay, let's just turn all this stuff off and let the sim do it and see how the sim does. And the sim did just fine. And that was, I sent an attaboy across, I sent an attaboy buried in a communication on some other stuff to Seb about that, because that was one of my big fears. Because the ground contact model does matter. And so, the airplane, it feels really nice. We're going to actually include in the documentation. This was an idea of one of the guys on our team, Paul, who is sort of our main. He's the guy that teaches us all the really techie stuff about airplanes that you learn when you fix airplanes for a living, like he does. And Paul said, hey, why don't you give people just a snapshot of what your control setup looks like for the steering for the tiller axis, so people can get an accurate feel for it. So that's going into the documentation, and I think that will really help people get a tiller feel that's much more like what the airplane does. But if you really want to do it realistically, get the airplane down to 2 knots before you go hauling the tiller over 90 degrees, because that's what goes on in the real world.
What aircraft do you fly in the real world? That's actually a really good question.
Well, I fly a DC-3, and I fly a product made by the Dassault Corporation. So I am very fortunate. I have a 3 and 4 engine airplane fetish, and I'm flying a 3 engine airplane, so that's kind of cool.
Nice. I have 3 or 4 questions backed up here, but I'm going to kind of go backwards a little bit. We talked last time you were with us. We talked about you flying the DC-3 across the Atlantic, and actually you did it twice, if memory serves correctly, for the D-Day thing. And do you actually own that aircraft then, or is it a group of people, or how's that work?
Yeah, I own it.
Nice.
Jeff, you and I, we're about the same age, and you probably grew up making plastic models like I did.
Yeah, that's right, I did.
I used to build models of DC-3s because I always thought it was just such a beautiful machine. And I lived near an Air Force base, and used to watch the KC-135s and a bunch of 707 derivatives that would become rivet joint, and a bunch of other things would fly in and out of this particular base. And there was C-141s and all this other stuff. And so I just happened to fall in love with the DC-3, the 727, particularly the 200 model. It's just got such beautiful lines, and this S duct in the tail that there's something visceral about it that my wife, the psychologist, has been trying to diagnose for years. And of course, the 747, who can possibly not fall in love with that?
Yeah, exactly.
And I built a bunch of those models, and owning a 727 will probably never happen. I really have to hit the lottery big to own a 747, but I got lucky. I found a DC-3 that was coming up on the end of her life. She was really not doing well, and the economy was imploding, and I wound up finding myself in a position where we could, some people rescue dogs. I rescued a DC-3, and it has been the experience of a lifetime. It has been a wonderful excuse to get together with a group of guys that are like brothers to me. I mean, these are guys that I love them dearly. When we get together, it is the sort of enjoyment that really makes hard work worth undertaking. And we have flown the airplane all over the United States. We have flown it back and forth across the Atlantic, over a good portion of Europe.
Nice.
And it is a life experience. Flying that airplane is unlike anything else I've ever done. And the cool thing is, when we land, people who love airplanes, because they come up and they want to talk to you, and they want to see it. And it's a really neat thing. I was at a memorial service earlier today, and then me and one of my guys were standing in the hangar, leaning on the DC-3, just kind of chatting about our buddy. And you realize you're a very fortunate fellow when you get to hang around with an airplane like that, because she's just a grand piece of machinery, and I love flying it.
It kind of reminds me of Mikey up there at Ice Pilots. They started another company. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, where they're going around and rescuing aircraft similar to, kind of what you just talked about. I can't remember what the name of that, what the name of that was, but I don't know. Maybe if you remember or not.
And so, and if you had asked me that about 5 minutes ago, I could have pulled it from memory, and I'm drawing a blank because you drew a blank.
Yeah.
But we actually we stopped in and saw him while they were putting their rescue DC-3 back together. And like everybody else, I had watched Mikey on Ice Pilots, and
I've seen a lot of those.
And like everybody else, because I watched him on Ice Pilots, I figured, obviously I must know him because I watched him on TV. So
he speaks your language, that's for sure.
Yeah. So as we were getting ready to go, it was actually 3 years ago. Well, actually, it was like 3 years ago today, I think. I just got this wild, crazy idea because flying a DC-3 across 3,000 miles of open ocean is crazy. And I reached out to him through their website and said, hey, we're going to be passing right by you on our way to Europe. Why don't we stop in and say hello? And I figured we'd get a very polite, please don't. And I got a reply back about 15 minutes later. You would have thought that Mikey and I had been best friends forever, and he, was so excited to hear from me, and hey, come on by, and we'll grab lunch, and we'll this and we'll that. I was floored by it, and I was floored by it, I guess, because I'm sort of jaded by. In my career, I've met a lot of people who are visible or recognizable, and I just human nature never fails to disappoint. And every now and then you meet someone who really is the way they seem, and Mikey is the real article, and he is as kind a human being as you could possibly meet. He would give you the shirt off his back just because you needed help. Great guy. We got up there, the schedule fell apart, the fueler, someday, when we'll have a conversation, I can tell you about all the things that went wrong while we were at St. Hubert Airport. And it was documented in a video that was uploaded on YouTube. But we wound up unexpectedly having to spend the night, and Mikey was up to his eyeballs in a huge crew trying to manage this big project. And Mikey came over and he said, hey, we're getting together for dinner tonight, right? And I, tried to demur, like, hey, our team is we got to do our thing. You guys got this huge project. And he was like, that's okay. We still have time for dinner. And they took us to dinner, and we sat at dinner and we laughed and we told stories. And, again, you could deceive yourself into thinking that this guy has been my friend forever. So, in my list of people who are my favorite, Mikey is in my top 10. He is one of the greatest people you'll ever meet. And if you ever do get an opportunity to stumble into some place where he is, I highly recommend you go and do it. He really is just a tremendous human being.
Yeah, he's good people. He's definitely good. We had him on Sky Blue. I think it was last year. Willie Canuck interviewed him, and you're right. He's just great people. You can just tell his heart is huge, So that's really cool. Let me throw some more questions in here.
Plane Sabers, by the way.
That's what it was. Yep, that's what it was. Plane Sabers. That's right. Okay.
Yep.
So I got reminded, JT, don't forget this question. He says, I'm curious if Rob can add something he previously said in the interview with Asobo. Now that you've come this far, have you gotten to the point where future products will be easier now that they've ironed out the process for development?
Wow. I hope so. This has been the most painful development process that we have been through. And in part because we're learning to work with a new platform, and that's never easy. It's always easier to do something, with a platform that you're comfortable with. It's if you're, I don't know if any of your listeners are, happen to cook, but it's always easy to cook a wonderful dinner in your own kitchen.
That's true.
So we are learning how to work with this new platform, and it has, at times it's been really frustrating, and at times that frustration has leaked out into the relationship between us and Asobo, and I'm sure they feel the same way, that working with us at times has been frustrating, but we certainly know more than we know even really a year ago. A year ago, we were in beta testing with the DC6, and we've learned a tremendous amount even since then. What would really help us to go faster at this point, it would be, for listeners that are code centric, we don't have the ability to view values in a debugger when running our products in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And, this has been, it's been a knee knocker for us, since we started. for example, to try to break this into language that makes sense so your listeners don't glaze over. If I'm trying to solve a problem in the electrical system, say in the 737, in Prepared, what I'll do is I'll have the sim running, and I'll have the debugger running, and I've got the code inside the debugger, and I can put a breakpoint in, and the execution of the code will stop at that point. And I can just hover my mouse over the different variables and see what values they hold. And then I can step through one line at a time to watch how the code executes and how the logic makes decisions and what values are driving those decisions. And so if, for example, right now in real time, actually, I am chasing a problem in the electrical system of the 737. And if I'm chasing that in Prepared, it can take me, 5 minutes or so, maybe to follow the logic through the entire system, see everything that it's doing, figure out what it is. But then I can go in and change the value that's being held by a variable, and I can change the logic in real time and hit a button, and it will quickly recompile and turn it back loose to the sim, and things will continue to run with the changes that I just made. So to figure out, what voltage, a particular light bulb has, I can stop the code, look at it, and if it's wrong, I can then make a change someplace that will immediately affect that change. And literally it will take me about 10 seconds to do that. In Microsoft Flight Simulator, we don't have that capability. In October of last year, we had a really nice high-level conversation with Microsoft and with Asobo, and Jorg from Microsoft was there, and Seb was there, and we talked it through, and I think they really heard us. They really understood the pain that we were feeling, and we were able to show them a couple of examples where diagnosing and solving a particular problem in Prepared that would take, and I'm not kidding when I say this, 10 seconds in Prepared, because we don't have those tools, and we have to create organically tools to dump data out into text files on drives and then sift through them and look at the timestamps and try to figure out, and work backward with, finger tracing and pencil drawing and things like that. Something that would take us 10 seconds to diagnose and fix in Microsoft Flight Simulator can at times take upwards of 9 hours in Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Wow.
When you start talking about code that is, we have millions of lines of code, and could we sidestep things by converting our code into JavaScript and make the whole process easier on the debugging front? I guess probably. There's a whole lot of stuff that JavaScript simply won't do at a scientific level that we rely upon, so that would be a problem. Plus the process of converting a couple million lines of really well thought out logical process that is, scientifically based and uses the same methodologies that aviation actually uses in the real world. I'm having a conversation right now with Universal Avionics about an avionics suite that they have that is compiled in C++. This is real world stuff we're working with here, and when your time ratio is 10 seconds to 9.5 hours, and that's if we get lucky and figure it out right away. It's not a survivable ratio, and so I think Microsoft knows that, and Asobo knows that, and there's a couple of guys that we interact with fairly frequently at Asobo, and I guess the best way to describe it is we've almost kind of become like siblings in the back of a car. We can't live without them, and they certainly I hope they feel similarly about us, but that doesn't mean that we don't kind of get a little tired of each other's elbows, in each other's ribs. And about the 9,000th time I asked, poor Eric at Asobo, we are going to get these debugging tools right. It was obvious in his reply that he was kind of tired of me asking that question every time he talked to me. So if we can get those, then yes, we will start to move like lightning, because there's a lot of difference in the way code gets compiled for Prepared versus the way it gets compiled for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it uses a different compilation engine. And code techniques that are perfectly valid according to the engineering behind C++, that are perfectly valid in the Microsoft compilation libraries, are not valid in the compilation library that gets used by Asobo for Microsoft Flight Simulator. They, believe it or not, they don't use the Microsoft compilation library. They use a different one, and I'm drawing a blank on its name. But it's it's a little subtle thing, but it's there. And so we have to go through the code and hunt for these things and find them. And oftentimes the way we find them is the airplane acts up. So dialing the altitude knob, and as it goes through 12,000 feet, all of a sudden it rolls backward, like, well, what's that? And so we have to go start looking for it. And it can take multiple engineers days to figure out why. And then we'll find out. It literally is, well, there's a curly brace here and a curly brace there, and that's okay according to, C++ 11 over here and, Microsoft, compilation tables, but it's not okay using this, this particular compilation method. So we have to go through the code and find these things and, work them all out. It's tough. It's hard work. It's not a lot of fun at times, but then you get weeks like we're having right now where we're looking at a product and, it is absolutely freaking beautiful to see, and it's working really well, and it runs fast. And, I find myself sitting back and saying, this team at Asobo has built an engine that is absolutely superlative for what we have always wanted to do. I mean, Jeff, I've been a simmer for 40 years now, and this is the sim we dreamed about when we were kids, you and I. I mean, it really is. And so, once again, apparently I'm incapable of short answers. Once again, very long answer to say that, if we can get this edit, continue, and debug tool that is, used in just about every other form of software development, if we can get that for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and they've told us that we will. They thought back in October that we might have it by mid this year. We haven't heard a whole lot from them on that topic lately, and they have big fish to fry on their plate. So I have tried, in the spirit of cooperativeness, I've tried to take constructively the feedback that I got from our buddy Eric at Asobo and not pester them about it, 9,000 times a week. I tried to knock it down to maybe 7,500. But I hope that they can get it to us. And when they can, it will really unlock speed for us. Because we know how to do the models, we know how to do the graphics, we know how to do the drawing, and we know how to do a whole bunch of stuff. But we really need to be able to see inside our code to see what it's doing in the sim in real time and adapt it and adjust it and work with it. And once we get that, we're off and running.
Good to go. Yeah, Big T, one of my DJs, he's listening from Germany right now, and he wanted to know if there's any other aircraft on the planning list besides the modern Boeings. He's thinking of stuff like the Jetstream or DC-3, something like what you have.
Yeah, so one of the things that keeps coming up in our team discussions, we have a couple of meetings that go on during the course of the week with different subgroups of people on the PMDG team, and there's a real thirst for hey, can we try something that's not yet another Boeing. And that's where our DC-6 came from. That's where its genesis is, and that's where the Jetstream came from. So I would say absolutely yes. There are going to be some other things. We have talked about what those might be, and there is a ubiquitous joke in PMDG circles that we had, I think, probably like 15 years ago. Some customer popped up in our forum and said, if PMDG made a wood pigeon, I'd buy it. So there have been wood pigeon crates in PMDG freighters going back now, a couple of generations of software, and who knows, maybe one day just for sport we'll make a wood pigeon. But
that'd be pretty funny.
I would love to see a DC-3. We do happen to know some guy who's got one. I'm not sure we could talk him into access, but we could try.
Yeah, that's the first step. You know a guy.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Grumpy old dude. but people are always like, oh, PMDG will never make a business jet, and who knows? Maybe there's something out there we might try to do. We have a lot of interesting contacts in the industry, and I'm going to get myself in trouble, so I'm going to stop. Yes, to answer his question, yes, there's stuff out there that we're talking about. Of course, the issue is when. If I can get my 30-hour day, 12-day week.
Yeah. That's what we're all looking for. That's for sure. The first PMDG product was the 1900D, wasn't it? That's what Terry is saying in our lounge here on the Discord channel. Is that right?
That was no. That was our first. That was our first vanity project.
Okay.
So we started out with the 757 for Fly, and then we did a 777 for Fly 2.
Okay.
And then we did the 757 for Fly 2. I'm really dating myself here. Then we did the 737 version 1.0, which released in July of 2003.
You got a pretty good memory,
Yeah, it can fail when it's suitable for me. So when I wander in late and Marissa's looking at her watch and saying, we were supposed to leave an hour ago. That's when my memory fails me. Very good. Oh gosh, honey, I forgot. I'm really brave when she's not in the room. So after the 7.3 came out, it was sort of funny because the team back then, this is 20 years ago now, the team decided that, my answer to everything was no. And, I wanted to move us right on to the 747 and the team. And this effort was led by Vin, who's Vin does the cockpits for all of our stuff. So when you're sitting in the cockpit, thank Vin, that's his work. Vin does all of our cockpit work, and Vin floated the idea of like, hey, we should try doing like a King Air or this or that. And of course I said no. And so Vin and Mark and another guy who's no longer with the team, they just kind of decided to see if they could they just sort of make one and get it far enough down the production process while I was away on my honeymoon that it would be viable by the time I got back, and I really wouldn't be able to say no. And so I thought this was, this Beech 1900, this was a certifiably insane idea, and nobody was going to buy it. And the best way to teach these guys a lesson was to, sure, yeah, you can finish that. We'll put it on the market. Right. We'll see what happens. And it sold more units in a single day than any PMDG product up to that point in history.
Oh, wow.
So I ate that crow sandwich. And so, and we've done a ton of projects since then. And, Henning's idea for, we like to do we call it a vanity project. I don't really know why we call it that, but every now and then it's just nice to get a change of gauge and do something that's not a full glass FMS, neutron driven Boeing airliner. And so, Henning, it was dealer's choice for Henning, and he came to me with this whole song and dance about how there's this really cool airplane nobody's ever heard of, and blah 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 blah, but I can get us access, and what is it? And he said it's a Jetstream 41, and I laughed and said, well, Henning, I happen to be type rated and have 25 hours piloting command time flying J41, so yeah, okay, I guess you could do that if you want.
Oh wow.
We did that one, and and the DC-6 was another one that Henning pitched. Henning comes up with good ideas, and so what we do need to do, we need to grow the team. And if we grow the team a little bit so I can lower everybody's workload down, then, we can start to add in some other stuff. So, but yeah, I'd love to do some other stuff. I would love to do a DC-3.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Speaking of that, not the DC-3, of course, but, when PMDG started out, you talked about last time you were with us that where the name PMDG came from. Can you kind of elaborate on that one more time for our listeners?
Yeah, I was working in management for United Airlines, which meant that I was dirt poor.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. Okay.
Yeah, building flight time, which meant that I was even more dirt poor.
Right.
And so Hardy Heinlein had written. Talk about a single man effort. Hardy Heinlein had written a DOS-based 747-400 simulation, and because I was a simming nerd like everybody else, I dove right in there as soon as it came out and sat by the pool in my apartment complex where I lived at the time, reading this manual, and it was paltry. The manual was paltry. The software was wonderful, and I decided, I've got a whole bunch of 747-400 manuals sitting on the floor in my apartment that were given to me by a friend of mine who flew the airplane, and so I thought, well, maybe I could digest all of this information, and then I got lazy and got distracted and decided not to do it, and then started to participate in an online forum for people using this software, and it became very evident that nobody knew how to start the airplane. So I decided, okay, well, let's try that. So I basically wrote a book called the 747-400 PS1 User's Guide, and it was basically how to operate the airplane and fly it correctly and realistically. And it was sort of loosely based on an amalgamation of Boeing and United and a couple of other airlines manuals that I had spread out on the floor and made procedures out of. And of course, I decided to sell it. So because I thought that if I could sell 50 of them, that would pay down the credit card debt I had from getting my instrument rating. So I started to put that together and needed a company name. And so, the software was Precision Simulator. So, not very creative. So I thought, well, okay, Precision Manuals Development. And then I added group to the end because I thought nobody would buy this if they knew it was just me. So, so I added group. It was sort of like my aspirational addition to the name. And that's where the name came from. And of course, we did that one. Look at that. I did that one book. That was it. And then got into the software side because I had been a sim geek my whole life, and I had done a whole bunch of modding of things. I had actually made a bunch of scenery for freeware groups back in the early '90s, and had made a bunch of airplane mods and stuff. And so I just decided, let's get into the software, and I did. And then, Mark Harrington from Germany joined up, and Vin Simone from at the time he was in upstate New York, he joined up, and a couple of other fellows, and then this guy and that guy and this guy and that guy, and over time the group actually came true. So it was aspirational, but we weren't doing really manuals anymore. So,
yeah.
And everybody called us PMDG. So we actually on January 1st of this year, the company name Precision Manuals Development Group of our parent company did actually officially change finally with the Nevada Secretary of State's office, and it is now the PMDG company. So so it's kind of funny how that sort of comes around.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's still out there somewhere.
Nice. The is there going to be any LNAV updates for the the Lockheed Martin P3D?
Oh, Dr. Vow's paging Dr. Vow.
Yeah, right.
So right now he's throwing things across his office because I know he's listening. This is a project that we've been working on for some time, and it's actually we have this new LNAV model in testing on the 747 when things started to really accelerate finally with the 737, and it's hard to work on two projects at once as a developer, and Vangelis was doing a very good job of that, but we hit a point where you start to look at work production and workflow and the ability to concentrate on something and succeed. And so we just kind of had to stop the testing of that in the 747 in order to get the dynamic flight model and the auto flight system for the 737 over the hill so that we could start to get this product into testing. And so we always thought that, the 747 will get LNAV first because that's, for me and Vangelis, that's our favorite airplane. So, of course, we were going to give it the fancy new stuff first.
Right.
But what we've decided to do instead was, we are treating the 737 release period really a lot differently than we usually do. we normally will get a product all finished, polished, drop it in the market, and then it's software. There's always something that pops up that didn't come up in testing, and you'll push a couple of updates to fix that, and then you move on to the next project. With the 737, because we're doing four of the I think it's 7, 8 now projects that will be 737 derived, because we've got the Maxes coming as well. We decided to treat this period of time where we've got we've got these 4 products coming. We're treating it almost like this is dangerous for me to use the term, but almost like an early access, where we're going to be pushing updates on it very, very rapidly. We're looking at a 2-week iteration cycle, so that as we are adding new features to the product, as we move through the 600 and the 800 and the 900, that as we add features in, we'll just be pushing them out the door. And our new LNAV is slated to be in that process. So we are, I harass Vangelis in our weekly meeting every week, because that's what I do for fun. And and I say to him, I find some way to tweak him on, and where are we with LNAV? Sometimes it's a profane gesture. Sometimes it's, he comes up with a good smart ass answer. And, but the reality is what we need is about 2 weeks of uninterrupted time in his schedule, so that we can slide that code over. And we would have done it already. But there is some latent danger here, because we already know what I was talking about earlier about the debugger, that we already know that we cannot step into this code in execution, stop it, look at the values that are being predicted for curves and arcs and required bank angles and turn rates and velocity vectors and things like that. Lateral nav is not a simple thing, especially not doing it and drawing it and making the airplane follow it correctly. And we've been debugging this in Prepared, and we can just jump right into the middle of the code and look at what everything's doing, and we can make changes and hit recompile, and it will pick up right where it left off. And we can't do that yet in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So we have to be really careful that we don't drag this over and break the dog.
And break something, yeah.
Because if we put it in there and it looks like it's doing great, and we push that out to customers, and someone comes back and says, hey, it was a right-hand turn and it took a left, it's not going to be an easy thing for us to figure out in real time why it would do that. And if we can't replicate that in Prepared, then it's going to be really hard to replicate it in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And by the way, that's what we're doing right now. A lot of our debugging, when our beta testers say, hey, I turned this light switch on and, that went off, and this horn, we go and try to replicate that in Prepared where we've got a debugger, see if we can't find the fault in the code, and then drag the code over to Microsoft Flight Simulator, and then reevaluate it to make sure that the fix took there. That's a dangerous thing to do with something as massively complex as lateral nav. So we have kind of refrained, and it's a matter of looking at Jorg and Asobo. They kind of gave us a sort of a Kentucky windage that they thought they'd get us edit and continue capability in mid 2022. So we sort of looked at the way the development agenda was going and the timeline on the 7.3, and we decided, hey, you know what? We're in close enough now to these two. Let's just not drag the LNAV in right now. Let's get to the middle of the year and hopefully get those tools, because when we have those tools, it's a really easy task at that point. It literally, Vangelis, when I've said to him, I'm like, let's just, wave the magic wand and pretend you have that capability. How long is this going to take you? And he laughs out loud and says, how long are you going to be gone for dinner? It's really that, it would be that easy to do. So, that might be overpromising. It's a lot easier than what we got right now. So we get those tools, that'll come right in. So it's coming, but it's coming. But the one that's in the 7.3 works great. It's just that we have learned a lot in the period since that one was designed. So we've got an even better one, an even more robust one coming.
That sounds great. I brought this up the last time you were here, and of course, listeners are asking the Same thing I asked back then, and I just wanted to kind of get an update about the global flight operations.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with that thing, so I'm excited for you guys to get that thing going.
Yeah, so am I. And the guy that I'm going to have all your listeners calling in the middle of the night to harass him for making me the video guy. He is the director of development. It's Chris Powell. He's the director of development for that project. And Chris and I've known each other for 35 years, and one of my earliest, dearest friends in the world. So I did to him exactly what you probably, if you go to the book of how to treat your friends, this is what not. This is in the chapter of what not to do. Gave him this wonderful project to run, and then stripped all the resources away from him in order to put them on other things, because that's what we needed to do.
Oh.
So it's still in development. It is still moving forward. We actually have some things in it that have not yet been done in other places with tracking and logging and things like that. But global flight operations is really geared toward the simulation of the airline operations environment, and it's doing some incredible things. We initially thought that would release years ago, and it's turned into a bigger project than we thought. But Microsoft Flight Simulator, landed in the small pond in which we live and disrupted the entire ecosystem, and our very survival has been hinging on getting our core product line, which is our airplanes, up and moving forward. And I say that not to be dramatic, but really our ability to get the DC-6 out and to get the 737 out. We're talking about survival of the organization type stuff. So we have had to be very careful with where we invest our resources and how we invest them. Excuse me. So Global Flight Ops is coming. There is one other knee knocker that has been impacting global flight operations, and that is the exodus of customers from the prepared community. It was originally built with a certain business model in mind, and that business model has evaporated into the wind and scattered like dust. So it still has a very relevant place in our product catalog, but we need the ability for our Microsoft Flight Simulator product line, the 737, the pending triple and pending 7.4, to be able to communicate with the outside world. And right now, for reasons that I've never really been able to understand, projects in Microsoft Flight Simulator that are C++ based are walled off from being able to communicate with the outside world. And global flight operations is a server-driven game environment. So we need our airplanes to be able to reach that environment in order to be able to participate in it. This is something we've brought up with Microsoft a number of times. If JavaScript airplanes, which is what most of the add-ons that have been released for Microsoft Flight Simulator are, they're JavaScript, and JavaScript is great at some things and just not at others. JavaScript products can communicate with the outside world, and C++ based products, which is where we are, cannot. And so when we brought that up, I believe it is in Microsoft's agenda to address this so that we can communicate with the outside world. We asked a couple of very direct questions in some of our more recent exchanges with them, and I don't think it's clear exactly when that's going to happen. So I am completely speculating, but I think that there are some technical challenges there that perhaps they are working on, or just scheduling challenges. I mean, they have a huge agenda, and what might be of critical importance to PMDG might not even factor in a day's, in a sixth season episode for them. So
Yeah.
we have to be mindful of that as well. So, but once so that is also a factor. Is we all of our customers are moving to an environment in which our products are walled off from the ability to interact with the outside world, and that's had an impact on the EFB in the 737. It's got an impact on GFO, and maybe in service update 10 or 11 or something, we'll get a tap on the shoulder from Asobo, and they'll say, oh, hey, by the way, that works now. Can you test it for us? And
away you'll go.
And that'll be great. So, I'm being very careful how I describe that, Jeff, because I don't want to make it sound like there was some nefarious intent there. I really think that I don't know why one type of project can and one type of project can't. But I don't think it was nefarious. I think it's just something that happened accidentally in the development process. And I do believe Jorg when he says that yes, this will get addressed. And I asked him point blank when, and the answer that I got back was we don't know. And hey, points for candor and honesty. That's as much as you can ask for. So,
I would rather have that too.
Yeah. None of us like to be given promises that are sing-songy. So,
yeah.
But once we get that, there is some fun stuff that we will be bringing to the table.
Okay, good. And then how about the 757? That's the next one coming out, right? We're going to have the 757.
Yeah. So, and we know where we can get one real cheap to use for survey. We just got to figure out how to get the tail and the front end up here. It's a lot of duck probably. Did you see the video of that thing going off that runway in down in Columbia?
Yeah, that was crazy. It looked like a brake locked up or something, wasn't it?
The professional pilot in me has been told never speculate on another pilot's accident. So
yeah,
let's
right.
do that. My heart goes out to them because they had it for a full hydraulic failure. They played the game perfectly. They did everything right. I watched that video and I wondered if maybe there was obviously there's going to be a steering issue. And so when the steering issue started to become more of a factor, they kind of, pulled the emergency brake handle, which will give you one good shot at the brakes, but you don't have anti-lock. And if you watch the smoke coming off the tires, you lock the brakes, you get reverted rubber, and all of a sudden,
boom,
you have no braking at all. So that is a nightmare. I fly an airplane that is heavily hydraulic. It's something we train for, and man, there's a whole lot of stuff that I'm not terribly afraid to handle, but landing an airplane that has absolutely no hydraulics, those guys, they did a very good job for what they got out of it. It's a shame they couldn't get it to roll to a stop straight ahead because, they were flying freight, so they'd never get the pat on the back, but
right.
They did a great job of getting it to where it was. And if you listen to the video, they were as calm as could be. Those guys, they had every confidence in their skills, and that's what I love about flying. Being locked in a pressurized tube with another professional is always fun.
Yeah, it has to be pretty scary. That's for sure. And I imagine they changed the shorts a couple times too after that. That had to be pretty. They're like, just take me to the bathroom, man. I'm fine. I'm not hurt. Just get me to the bathroom.
Yeah, that ride off the runway had to be horrific.
Yeah, crazy.
Oh man. You have no control. I had a tiller fail on me driving an airplane, and I was going around a corner, which kind of relates back to our only do it at a couple of knots. I was going around a corner and had a tiller fail, and you want to talk about like the lag time in why is it doing that, and well, maybe I should apply the brakes and bring this to a stop. I was only probably doing a knot and a half, and I saw the grass disappear underneath the nose of the airplane, and that was a really, really uncomfortable moment. And it was fine. We were okay. We brought the airplane to a stop, and et cetera, and I can't imagine watching what those guys saw out that cockpit window. That was a life event, and I'm glad they're both okay. And no matter what comes out of it, they did a wonderful job of bringing a very, very sick airplane back to a piece of pavement.
Yeah, and they weren't hurt. They weren't hurt either. So that's even better there too.
Yeah, and the freight's still reusable.
Yeah, right, right. So I think we're going to start wrapping it up here, but I just wanted to confirm a couple things that we talked about earlier. You said the release date is April 15th, next Friday, right?
Gosh, this has been such a long show. I forget what I said, but something,
Something close to that at least, right?
Yeah. It was definitely in 2022.
Okay.
I know that.
Okay, that's good. That's a good start.
Yeah, probably second quarter 2022.
Okay, that's worth a try.
Actually, I'll give you our release date. Our initial release date was going to be like June 10th of 2020.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So one more thing that I had for you is your DC-3. Have you thought about flying it down to Sun and Fun or anything like that? That'd be kind of fun.
All right. So I'm going to give you a window into me. The team that helps me operate the DC-3, they think I'm a freak. I am actually a very private person. I really don't like crowds, and
yeah, me neither.
I believe it or not, I don't like taking it to big air shows. I like taking it to little air shows. I love taking the DC-3 to a show where the people who walk up to the airplane probably didn't even know that their town or community had an airport until they saw you fly over.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
they decided, let's go see what that's all about. I've never been to Sun and Fun, and I did go to Oshkosh once. The team, they snookered me into, they convinced me that Oshkosh would be cool and it would be fun. And, they know I don't particularly love crowds. So they were like, well, it'll just, you'll be with the airplane. There won't be that many people around. They lied to me.
Yeah.
It was like, me and 600,000 of my best friends or something like that. So, I'm not comfortable in that sort of environment. But I don't see taking it to Sun and Fun. No, I don't. And we're just, as a matter of fact, Lindy, one of the guys that flies it with me, we were talking today about the fact that, now that we do seem to be kind of on the backside of the whole COVID thing, it's time to get her out and start figuring, find some local regional shows in the U.S. Mid-Atlantic region that would benefit from having a DC-3 fly circles over downtown and then land to start the show.
That would be so cool.
It brings people out, and it's such an iconic airplane, and everyone knows what it is, even if they don't know it's a DC-3. Everyone identifies with its period in history, and so we were talking about the fact that it's time to get that spooled up and get that process going again. So, we'll be back out doing that.
If you come out towards Denver or Colorado, let me know. I'll buy you lunch, and it would be really cool to see that. I had one final question. Is that it's from Viral White. He says it's a dumb question. There really isn't any dumb question that I know of. They want to know if the windshield wipers are going to work in the 737 in Microsoft Flight Simulation. It seems like it's a Microsoft issue, but we're just trying to see if those things are going to work.
I'm gonna, I was just gonna be funny. I was gonna try to play for the gag and go, yeah, that's a dumb question. Next, I was gonna play for the gag. I thought it would be funny, but that would actually be kind of a jerk thing to do. So, I think if I understand the question correctly, there's a lot of folks who want to see water on the windshield and then have the rain, the wiper slick it away. And
yeah, that's exactly what it was. He meant with the ring. Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and so the answer to that is that yes, it will eventually. There's two ways to go about that. One is we could engineer a whole process to do that in real time at a simulation level, or one we could wait because we already know that Asobo has that process in the pipeline in development, and so this is one of those things. This goes from being like it's a software thing, just do it, versus being, this is a business decision. So this fits into a business decision. For us, it is far more cost effective from a development standpoint, since we know Asobo is about to give us that functionality in the SIM anyway, to let them bring it into the SIM and use their process rather than coming up with our own. So we came up with our own process that was sort of unique and different in how we approached it in Prepared. And we know for a fact that it is a massive resource hog. And I always get nervous whenever we try to do something, cool and gee whiz that we also know happens to be a resource hog. But when we started that came up on our development agenda, are we going to do this or not? And we reached out to Asobo, and Asobo said, we do have that coming. And there was a whole secondary discussion on that I don't want to share because it was between us and them. It just, from our standpoint, it makes sense to let them bring their process in, and then we can tweak and adapt it from there. So it will not do it in the initial release, but at one of these service update drops, and I do have some information on when that's going to be, and I'm being very intentional in not saying it. When that does drop in a service update, it will just automatically start working in the 7.3. So
that'll be really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Robert, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. I think that all the listeners that were here had a great time, and we got a lot of questions answered. And again, we're very thankful for you to do that. And please send our thanks to your team for putting together a great product. And we'll look forward to next week when it drops. Right? Which day did you say that was? Next week?
Wait, what? Second quarter.
I'm breaking up, right? I'm breaking up. That's pretty funny. Okay. Well, anybody that's listening right now, if you missed any part of the show, we're going to release it on podcast here later on this evening, probably, and then I'll get it onto the Sky Blue Radio YouTube channel as well. And you can listen to the whole thing in its entirety. And thanks again, Robert. Really appreciate you being here. And I got some Tears for Fears to kind of close out the interview, since that's one of your favorite groups. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah. And hey, Jeff, always a good time chatting with you. I do very much enjoy it. And
me too.
I appreciate your listeners tuning in, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Sounds good, Robert. Thank you very much. That was Robert Randazzo from PMDG. We just love having him online. So thanks to him, and thanks to all you guys for listening. All right, so let's get to that Tears for Fears. I got DJ Skip coming up next here on Sky Blue Radio.